It's about how you handle power, especially when no one's watching. So here's the truth. You don't have to raise your voice to make noise. You don't have to fight to be right. But when the time comes to speak, speak with clarity. And when someone tries to define you, let your actions do the talking, because respect isn't measured in volume. It's revealed in the echo that follows, if you've ever been talked over, boxed in, or overlooked. Remember this story, and never forget. What people assume about you says far more about them than it ever will about you. He entered the interview composed, confident, and exceptionally prepared, yet the moment they saw her, their expressions hinted that she didn't quite fit in. What they didn't realize, her husband had just acquired the company. And he was watching every second. Renee Carson wasn't new to this world. At 43, with a strong background in strategic marketing and more professionalism than many executives twice her pay grade, she carried herself with ease. Doubt was rare for her, but that morning, as she parked her silver Acula in the underground lot beneath a sleek, mirrored office tower in downtown Austin, her fingers lingered on the steering wheel for just a moment longer than usual. She exhaled, slow and steady. Then she grabbed her leather portfolio, smoothed the front of her navy blazer, and walked toward the elevator. The click of her heels echoed with assurance. Her resume was flawless, her references rock solid. This wasn't just another job interview, this was her comeback. After stepping away from her career for nearly 2 years to care for her ailing father, Renee was ready to return, not timidly, but with purpose. The reception area was immaculate but sterile. White walls, harsh lighting, abstract art that said nothing. Behind the marble desk sat a young woman with flawless makeup, a high ponytail, and a glance that scanned Renee from head to toe, as if questioning her presence. "Good morning," Renee said, smiling. "I'm here for the 10 a.m. with Elaine Beckman." The receptionist blinked, slightly taken aback by her warmth, then typed something into her computer. "You're Renee Carson, yes." A pause. The receptionist gave a tight nod and lifted the phone. Her voice dropped low, nearly whispering. She watched Renee the entire time she spoke. After a few short words, she set the phone down and gave a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Someone will be with you shortly." "Thank you," Renee replied, taking a seat on the nearby bench facing the window. She glanced at her watch. 9:52, right on time, as always. The lobby remained still. No buzz of employees. No other candidates, just her, and the cold hum of the air conditioning. 5 minutes passed, then 10. At 10:07, a tall man in a slate gray suit stepped through a frosted hallway door. He didn't meet her eyes at first. When he finally did, his expression flickered with subtle surprise, as if expecting someone else entirely. "Renee Carson," she stood. "Yes. I'm Devin Marks, head of marketing. I'll be joining Elaine for today's meeting." No handshake. Just a nod and a motion to follow. They walked in silence. No small talk, no welcome. Only the sound of his rubber-soled shoes against the polished floors. Inside the conference room, Elaine Beckman sat behind a laptop, reading, glasses low on her nose. She didn't rise. "Let's get started," she said curtly. The questions came quickly, but they weren't what Renee expected. "Are you certain this is the position you applied for? How much do you actually know about client-facing platforms? Have you worked in a corporate environment of this scale before? What about that 2-year employment gap?" There was an edge to the tone, not curiosity, but skepticism, doubt, disbelief, even. At one point, when Renee referenced her experience managing international clients, Elaine quirked an eyebrow. "International?" "Yes, Singapore, Toronto, Frankfurt." 15 minutes in, Devin closed his notebook abruptly. "There seems to have been a miscommunication. This role was actually filled internally late last night," he said. "Apologies for the inconvenience," Elaine added, almost dismissively. "We'll keep your information on file." No handshake, no parting words, just a silent nod toward the door. Renee walked back through the lobby. The receptionist didn't look up. Already deep in a phone call, or pretending to be, the elevator doors opened. She stepped in, alone. No one said goodbye. But what none of them realized was that someone had been watching. 10 floors up, behind a wall of dark glass, Julian Maris hadn't moved from his spot since the receptionist picked up the phone. He had seen everything. From where he stood, Julian had seen it all, the way her expression tightened, How Devon subtly fixed his tie the moment he saw Renee. Every word, every glance, every pause had filtered clearly through the live audio stream in the observation suite. 3 days earlier, Julian had finalized the silent majority acquisition of Bradford Keene and Associates. No press releases, no leaks. That wasn't his approach. He never needed a headline. Julian was 47, clean-cut, composed, the kind of man who didn't raise his voice because he didn't have to. Born in Lubbock, educated in San Diego, he'd made his mark turning underperforming tech consultancies into thriving multi-million-dollar powerhouses. But this deal wasn't just about numbers, it was about something deeper. He'd studied the company's structure, noticed what wasn't there. The glaring absence of diversity in leadership, the sameness in its hires, the tone in its internal communications. He wanted to see who he was walking into business with, unfiltered. Renee had offered to stay out of it, let the transition play out. But Julian asked her to attend the interview. Not for the job, for the truth. And now, he had it. Replay the last 2 minutes, he said evenly. Next to him, a junior legal associate tapped a few keys. Through a discreet ceiling speaker, the final part of the interview played again. Elaine's clipped tone, Devon's cold neutrality, the patronizing "we'll keep your resume on file," the sound of dismissal wrapped in false professionalism. Julian said nothing at first, then he turned to a sleek panel on the wall and pressed a button. "Have HR in my office at 11:30. A voice crackled through the intercom, hesitant. "Which HR manager, sir?" "All of them." A pause. "Yes, sir." Julian looked out over the city. Austin shimmered in the late morning haze. A small plane crawled across the sky. On the streets below, people moved through their ordinary lives, unaware that a quiet earthquake was about to start 10 stories up. Down the hall, 2 former board members sat in a transition lounge, sipping coffee, oblivious to the changes already unfolding. Julian had spent his first 48 hours reading through internal memos, reviewing Slack logs, cross-checking hiring records. A pattern emerged, not subtle, alarming in its consistency. 6 years of hires, almost all mid to senior level, had followed a script, same degree programs, same neighborhoods, same polished, culture-fit vibes. Different names, same mold. Julian had seen this before. Early in his own career, the tone, the performative politeness, the underlying message, "You don't belong." They called it culture. He called it comfort bias. He took a slow lap across the room, then turned to his associate. "Do we have the front desk camera angle?" "Yes, sir." "Full footage and audio, time-stamped." "Send it to my office. I want it archived and logged." "I'll have it over within 20 minutes. Julian nodded. "Thanks, Lean." Then he left. In the elevator, he leaned against the wall, closed his eyes. He wasn't angry, not in the explosive sense. This was quieter, sharper, like watching a lock click open. He texted Renee, "Heading home soon, don't leave just yet." No punctuation, which meant his mind was moving fast. She'd recognized that tone even in silence. Back in the garage, Renee walked like her shoes had weight in them. Not from rage, from something heavier, not defeat, not quite, but something close. She kept her posture strong, but every step rang louder in her own head than it did on the polished concrete. She entered her car, shut the door, but didn't start the engine. Just sat. Sunlight filtered through the slats, striping the dashboard. Her hands rested in her lap. Her eyes wandered to the rearview mirror, hair still smooth. Lipstick still pristine, blazer sharp, but somehow, she felt erased. 15 years in the industry, global campaigns, Fortune 500 logos on her resume, and never, not once, had anyone asked if she was sure she applied for the right job. She breathed out slowly. Yes, she'd stepped away, but not off course. When her father's health declined in late 2021, she'd left without regret. Coordinating prescriptions, navigating hospital visits, managing schedules and meals with the same precision she once used to lead quarterly earnings reviews. After he passed that winter, she took time, not to grieve, but to rediscover herself. Then one quiet evening at the dinner table, she'd looked at Julian and said, "I'm ready." He didn't ask what she meant. He just reached across the table and took her hand. "Then go get what's yours." And she did. She rewrote her resume, updated her portfolio, practiced interview scenarios with friends from her old firm. Read industry forecasts, shortlisted top-performing companies. Bradford Keene was at the top of that list, now. They hadn't even seen her, not really. She remembered what Julian had told her the night before. I know what you're worth. You know what you're worth. The room either recognizes it, or exposes itself. Either way, we win. She'd smiled at the time. Thought he was just trying to calm her nerves. Now she saw it. He hadn't been reassuring her. He'd been preparing her. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Julian. Heading home soon. Don't go anywhere just yet. No emojis. No fluff. He was in his zone. And something told her this wasn't over. She thought about texting back. Maybe something half joking, half frustrated. You were right. But she didn't. Something deeper told her to wait. She reached into the passenger seat, pulled out her notebook, and flipped to the inside cover. Written in ink, in her own script, your presence is power. She closed the book, then she started the engine. No rush, no anger, just calm. The kind of calm that comes right before the weather changes. But while Renee was steadying herself, others were scrambling to make sense of what was coming. Devin Marks had just bitten into his tuna sandwich when his phone buzzed, a calendar alert from internal communications. Mandatory HR session, 11:30 a.m., 10th floor boardroom, attendance required. He raised an eyebrow, checked the sender, then the time. Elaine, he called, half chewing, you get that HR thing just now. Down the hall, Elaine Beckman was adjusting her blouse in the window's reflection. She didn't turn. Yeah, it came through about 10 minutes ago. Any clue what it's about? She smoothed a crease at her collar. Probably the merger, paperwork stuff. Devin shrugged, wiped his mouth, and returned to his desk. Probably nothing. HR meetings happened all the time. Usually about compliance updates or vague memos no one read. But across the building, a very different conversation was underway. Inside a locked boardroom, Julian stood with his arms crossed. Lean sat beside him, and two HR leads, Rosa Levington and Martin Cross, looked like they'd just been called into a test they hadn't studied for. Did they know? Julian asked softly. They think it's a routine sync-up, Lean said. Julian gave a short nod. Good. At exactly 11:28, Devin walked in. Elaine arrived a minute later. They were mid-joke, laughing about a client typo until they saw the room. No projector, no folders, no whiteboard, just Julian. He didn't speak. Let the silence stretch like fog on a windshield. Elaine cleared her throat. Sorry, we weren't briefed on what this meeting was about. You will be, Julian said calmly. He looked to Rosa. She opened a folder and pulled out several stapled sheets. These are excerpts from this morning's interview session, she began, with one of our external candidates. Specifically, the 10 a.m. appointment. There was a 10 o'clock meeting with Ms. Renee Carson. Devin blinked. Wait, what? Elaine frowned. I thought that got cancelled. It didn't, Rosa replied. Martin, who had been mostly quiet, finally spoke. The interview was recorded, logged, and remotely observed per our updated policy under the company's Equity Compliance Initiative. Elaine shifted in her chair. Are we being investigated? Rosa's tone stayed neutral. You're being asked to explain the decisions made during that meeting. Julian stepped forward, his voice measured but firm. You both were given the opportunity to evaluate a candidate who met every listed requirement and even surpassed several. Yet, rather than conduct a complete and fair interview, you questioned whether she'd applied to the right role, then told her the position was already filled. Devin opened his mouth but didn't speak right away. He fumbled for words. We had an internal applicant come in unexpectedly. After the 10 a.m. slot had already started. Julian raised a brow. After the interview had already started. Elaine interjected. With all due respect, she just didn't seem like the best fit. Her background was a little scattered. There was a gap on her resume to years. To care for a dying parent, Julian cut in, his tone sharper now. Which was clearly explained in her application. The room fell into silence. He looked at them both. What exactly didn't you see, or maybe more to the point what did you see that made you decide she didn't deserve the full interview? Elaine opened her mouth, closed it, then looked away. Julian nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Devin's face was flushing now. Look, we didn't mean anything by it. It was a misread. Happens. Julian's voice stayed even. Happens to who? Silence again. He stepped back slightly. Here's what's happening now. Your department's hiring practices are under full review. Every resume you've rejected, every candidate you've selected, we're going through it all. And when the company announces its leadership changes next week, your names won't be on that list. Elaine's head shot up. Wait, this is personal. Julian met her eyes. No, it's systemic. And I'm not interested in hearing more excuses dressed up as misunderstandings. As the boardroom went still, someone else was already walking back through the front doors. Renee. Her heels echoed softly across the lobby. No one whispered this time, no dismissive looks. A tall man in a gray suit approached her as the elevator opened. Miss Carson, he said politely. Yes. Right this way. Mr. Mars is expecting you. He led her down a quiet hallway she hadn't seen before. Framed awards and client testimonials lined the walls. The atmosphere felt different here, not cold like the front lobby, but expectant, maybe even respectful. They stopped at a sleek conference room with windows spanning from floor to ceiling, overlooking the city skyline. Julian stood as the door opened, offering a steady look, not quite a smile, but a question in his eyes. Are you all right? She gave a subtle nod. No smile. But she was ready. Julian turned to the table. 3 senior execs sat across from her, with a legal rep and Rosa from HR present. Everyone, Julian said, this is Renee Carson, strategic marketing expert with over 15 years of proven, high-impact work. And, until 2 hours ago, a candidate one of your teams decided wasn't the right fit for the role she helped design. Renee didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her voice calm and direct. I'd like to make something clear, she said. I didn't apply for this role hoping for a favor or waiting for someone to recognize my potential. I know exactly what I bring to the table. I don't need validation, I need opportunity. The room stilled. Rosa gave a slow nod. One of the executives made a note. I took a break in my career because my father was dying, Renee continued. And I'm not sorry for that. What I won't accept is being reduced to a bullet point you don't bother to understand. Julian stepped back and let her speak. She turned toward the legal representative. I understand that companies are under pressure to appear inclusive. But real inclusion isn't a press release. It's how people are treated in moments when no one's watching. When it's just someone walking through your door. No one interrupted. Carla Baines, one of the senior executives, leaned forward. Ms. Carson, I won't make excuses. But if we were to offer you the position with full authority to lead, would you still want it? Renee took a breath. The answer was already within her, but she let the moment settle first. I came here today looking for a chance, she said. What I got instead was clarity. I don't want to work for a place that struggles to see me. I'm not a maybe, I'm not a risk. I'm an asset and one I won't undersell. Julian gave a slight nod. Carla sat back, visibly impressed. Renee turned to Julian. We good? Always, he replied. She left without looking back. The hallway hadn't changed, but she had. The next morning, inboxes at Bradford Keene buzzed. Subject line, leadership update and structural realignment. It wasn't the usual fluff. Julian Mars, newly announced CEO, didn't pad his words. He gave names, timelines, and clear directives. Effective immediately, the hiring department was under external review. A third-party firm would handle recruitment moving forward. 2 department heads, Devin Marks and Elaine Beckman, were no longer with the company. The whispers started fast. What happened? Why now? Was it about the merger? By noon, the HR floor was a hush of closed doors and careful words. Julian's office stayed open. He wasn't hiding. He'd made a decision. Now came the follow-through. The company had spent years building a reputation for being forward-thinking. No one had noticed how homogeneous the leadership remained until now. Around 3 p.m. Carla entered Julian's office. She turned us down, she said plainly. Julian didn't look surprised. Good. She deserved better than a rushed PR fix, Carla agreed. She's not gone, Julian said, looking out the window. She's just not here. Across town, Renee sat in a cozy cafe, laptop open, a proposal draft in progress. 2 days ago, she'd already decided she wouldn't return even if they offered. After that so-called second interview, she'd walked out of the building lighter than she'd felt in months. Julian hadn't tried to convince her to stay. He'd just asked what she wanted. And what she wanted was her own firm, her own terms, her own space. She had already signed 3 clients' contacts from her old network who had quietly asked if she was ready. Now, she was. Her new company would focus on brand storytelling and consumer strategy, especially for underrepresented voices. She called it True North Strategies. Julian had smiled when he heard the name. A barista approached with a coffee. "Here you go, Miss Carson." "On the house." Renee blinked. "Sorry, my aunt told me about what happened yesterday," the barista said, smiling shyly. "Said you handled it like a pro." Renee offered a quiet smile, took the cup, and nodded. Outside, the sky was turning gold. That evening, she stood in her kitchen, slicing lemons for tea. The house smelled like rosemary and sage leftovers from Julian's earlier roast. He came in, setting ice into a glass. "You know," he said, "when I asked you to take that interview, it wasn't a test." "I know," she replied, still slicing. "You were testing them." Julian gave a low chuckle. "Didn't expect them to fail that badly, not with the cameras on." "That's because you still give people the benefit of the doubt." She added the lemon slices to the simmering pot. "They saw what they wanted to see," she said. "That's always the issue. People look past you and then act like they're doing you a favor." Julian came closer, placing a hand gently on her back. "But you didn't flinch." "Not even in that boardroom." She gave a faint smile. "Still doesn't mean I was silent." They stood there, calm and full. "They offered, didn't they?" he asked. "They did," she said, turning off the stove. "I told them I already had something better lined up." He raised his brows. "You name it yet?" "True North Strategies." He nodded. "Strong, clear, yours." She poured 2 mugs of tea. "Do you think it'll matter?" she asked. One woman walking away. One firm starting small. Julian sipped before answering. "It matters more than any headline. Real change doesn't start with press releases. It starts in rooms like that one. It starts when someone stands their ground without making people comfortable with injustice." She didn't reply, just watched the steam rise from her mug. "Do you ever think," she said softly, "that the people who teach us patience are the same ones hoping we'll stay quiet?" Julian looked at her. No words. He understood. The doorbell rang. Renee answered. It was Carla. She held an envelope. "I didn't want to send this electronically," she said. "It's a formal acknowledgement, a letter of apology, a separate statement from the board." Renee didn't reach for it. Carla cleared her throat. "I know it doesn't fix anything. But we want you to know we saw it. All of it." Renee met her eyes. "That's a start," she said. "But respect doesn't come in a folder." Carla nodded. "Understood." She turned to leave, paused. "For what it's worth, they're scared now. Not of you, of being seen." Renee gave a near imperceptible nod and shut the door. Back in the kitchen, Julian scrolled through his phone. "Anything new?" she asked. "Actually, yeah. Someone from Sandwell Partners reached out. Asked about you. Said they heard you're back in the game." Renee grinned. "Tell them I'm not playing games. Just delivering results." He laughed. "Will do." They sat together in the warm kitchen. No tension now, just clarity. This wasn't revenge. It never was. It was truth. It was self-respect. Renee didn't beg, didn't broadcast. She walked out, then built something of her own. And if this story stirred something in you, share it. Because somewhere, someone else is being overlooked and they deserve to be seen.